right. Sorry about that, guys. Buddy. All right. Hey, everybody. So my computer all of a sudden was acting really weird. As soon as I tried to go live, everything kind of just stopped working, and I was getting all kinds of spinny, not loading things. Thanks, guys. Thank you all for staying with me, even though we got started late today. But I think things seem to be working okay right now. Hey, everybody. So give some shout outs. Justin Yin, thank you for complimenting my euphonium playing. This, by the way, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about today. This is a baritone, but there's also a very similar instrument called a euphonium. So do we have any people that can give a little shout out there? If you play baritone or euphonium, make sure you check in. We have our friend Dennis here, who's going to be keeping track of some of your questions. Say hi, Dennis.
Hey, how you doing?
So if you have some questions, Dennis will try to catch those and feed them to me so I can answer your questions. Who was a friend that had a birthday today? Dennis, do you remember who that was? Was that Eric?
Not really. Let me see.
Somebody checked in at the beginning. So for anyone who, what's that?
I'll go back and look.
Okay. So for anyone who has a birthday today, because I remember someone checked in at the very beginning. Eric Escalante Bravo. All right. So I'm going to play Happy Birthday for Eric, who checked in. Today's your birthday. And anyone else whose birthday is today or this week or last week. Okay. So I'm going to play Happy Birthday in the key of concert E flat. And if you want to sing along at home, you can. That's the part at the end that some people like to sing. So this here is a baritone, okay? Now, there's two instruments, baritone and euphonium, that are very similar. And sometimes people get them mixed up because they look very similar. They serve very similar roles in a band or orchestra. Of tubing, they have the same amount of valves, although some professional versions have 4 valves. This is a Jupiter baritone. So the main difference between a baritone and euphonium is the way that the bore or the tubing is shaped. So a baritone, this one has more of a cylindrical bore, which means the tubing is more like a cylinder. And a euphonium has more of a conical bore, which means it goes out like this more. And so they sometimes look a little bigger. And euphonium has maybe more of a tuba-like, sort of a rounder quality to it. And a baritone maybe has sort of a lighter, more streamlined tone to it. But they both can play the same music. They both read bass clef. So here's a scale. Here's a concert B-flat scale. Now, if you play, how many people out there play trumpet? If you play trumpet, check in. The cool thing about baritone, and sometimes you'll find trumpet players over to baritone if they like playing lower notes, because the cool thing about a Qualler checks in. Any other trumpet players out there? So the valves of the baritone follow the same pattern as trumpet. So I'll get my trumpet here. So if you play your open no valve note on trumpet, that's a concert B flat. On trumpet, we call it a C. Ooh, not warmed up at all. So no valves, your low concert B flat, but on trumpet, we call it a C. On baritone, it's the same note, an octave lower. So if you play your C scale on trumpet, watch my finger. It's the same exact scale on baritone, euphonium, except we name all of our notes by their concert pitch. B flat. Okay. Pedro wants to know what type of trumpet this is. This is a Bach student model trumpet. I don't know the exact model number, but it's a Bach USA. It's a student model trumpet. So am I still lagging? Some people are checking in that I'm lagging or it's not loading. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know what is going on with my my internet connection or my computer today, but it's a little bit weird. So sorry about that. I wanted to talk about some things of what I did this week in band. And then I'll answer some more of your questions. So this week in band, we are getting close to finishing up marching band. I don't know how many of you out there are in marching band, but we just had our second to last competition last night, and we have our final championship competition on this coming Saturday, and then we'll be done with our marching band practices. And then we're getting started with jazz band. I wanted to show you guys this. Yeah, Peter says we're sorry about that, guys. One of my latest videos I did a saxophone video for my saxophone players in my jazz band. This is me. It's me playing the sax parts on a jazz band chart called Hey Burner, which is a lot of fun. It's a cool chart. So go check out that video on my channel. It's kind of fun. I played both of the alto parts, both of the tenor parts, and the baritone sax part, and put them all together on GarageBand. So very cool. I think I saw a question here about baritone that I want to answer. Something about the baritone being in B flat. I think they said why is the baritone considered in the key of B flat? So whatever key so we have alto sax is in the key of, well, let me quiz you guys. Okay. So we have instruments in different keys, we call it. So what does anyone know what key a French horn is in? Just put the answer there in the chat. What key is a French horn in? Justin got the right answer. It's the key of F. Does anyone know what key a lot of you got the answer. Good job, guys. What key is a clarinet and a trumpet in? Do you guys know that answer? What key is a clarinet and a trumpet in? They're both in sax too. YOLO Beast got the right answer. It's B flat. Peter Warner got the right answer too. So, and alto sax, I'll quiz you one more time. Alto sax is in the key of, same as baritone sax, E flat. Right. Renee got the right answer. What that means is, and then a baritone and a flute and a trombone and I don't know. I'm trying to think of other instruments. They're in the key. Really, they're C instruments. Okay. And what that means is when you play a C on your instrument, it actually comes out a C. Okay. Now, when you play a C on a tenor sax, what is actually coming out is a B flat. That's why it's called a B flat instrument. If you play a C on a clarinet, what's actually coming out is a B flat. That's why it's called a B flat instrument. Same thing for alto sax. If you play a C on an alto sax, An E flat is actually coming out. So that's where the instruments get their keys names from. Trombone is in the key of the concert pitch instrument. So when a trombone plays a C, it's actually a C on the piano. Okay. Hi, Jason says, why are there no saxes in the orchestra? It's a long story on that one, but basically most of the orchestral music, does anyone know, to answer that question, does anyone know around what year saxophones were invented? Does anyone know around what year saxophones were invented? They're actually kind of maybe the most recent instrument. Yeah, you guys are in the right ballpark there. I believe it was more around 1850. Somebody can Google that. It was in the mid 1800s when Adolf Sax, his last name was actually Sax, and so he named it a saxophone. So it's the saxophone wasn't invented until the mid 1800s, and a ton of orchestral music was written before that. So like when Mozart was writing music, he had no idea a saxophone was not invented. Beethoven, most of what Beethoven wrote they weren't really using saxophone. No, saxophone wasn't invented yet. Only when you get into the later composers where saxophone's even around. So you find some music by Rachmaninoff and Bizet, and who else has saxophones in their orchestra music, but they're mostly used in orchestras as a special instrument. So there might be one piece that an orchestra does that needs a saxophone. So they'll bring in a saxophone player. I did that one time. I did that for a Rachmaninoff piece for my college orchestra. I did it for Leonard Bernstein, a piece with orchestra. So Dennis, do you see any good questions coming through?
Yeah, there's a couple. One is says, should I use a 3 instead of a 2.5 reed, or my clarinet to play octaves?
Yeah, I recommend that you, for clarinet, generally, sometimes beginners will start on like a 2 or a 2.5, but once you start getting into the upper range of your clarinet, there's our low register, there's our upper register. You definitely want to get onto a 3 reed. And sometimes people even get up to like 3.5s, but I start with a 3, and that helps you get your higher notes clearer. And a 3 is a stronger reed, which means it won't close off as easily. If you put a lot of air into it, it'll stand up to your embouchure pressure and your air, and it will make a nicer sound. Let's see. So, hi, me, Jason. I just answered your question, and you checked in again and said you made region and got a perfect score. Good job. Got into orchestra. Caden Harris asked, "What's the best instrument for jazz band?" Jazz bands typically have a trumpets, 4 or 5 trumpets, 3 or 4 trombones, sometimes 5, bass trombone, and alto, tenor, bari sax, and then piano, bass, guitar, drum set. That's your basic big band, jazz band. Although you can play jazz on any instrument. In the 1930s and 40s, the clarinet was a huge jazz instrument. So you can play jazz on a clarinet. So Benny Goodman and people like that, Buddy DeFranco played clarinet. Artie Shaw. Subscribe is asking, can I help with the chromatic scale on the flute? So chromatic scale is when you play every single note on your instrument. It's like playing all the white keys and black keys on the piano. Right? So that's playing every note on your instrument, including all the flats and sharps. Ooh. So to actually explain the full chromatic scale on the flute would take too long for our live stream, but that's a great idea for doing a video. If you Google a flute fingering chart, you can find all the notes, or in your band book, if you have a lesson book for band, probably has a page with all the fingerings. Just go in order all the way up. Preston says, play oboe. I don't have an oboe with me today, Preston. I'm sorry about that. I know I think I promised in another live stream that I would do oboe. So I have to get myself an oboe and bring it home for one of my live streams. Danilo Sabino says, what's better, a plastic or a cane reed? So cane is much preferable because it sounds better. Plastic works okay, I guess, if you're playing in maybe in marching band. I mean, it's important to make a good sound even if you're in marching band, but when you're playing on a plastic reed, it might be work better outside in the elements. It won't get damaged as easily, but you want to go with a normal, natural cane reed most of the time. That's going to sound the best. So let's see here. Some other Dennis, do you see anything?
Yeah. Somebody has what's an easy way to learn the bass clef?
What's an easy way to learn the bass clef? Right. Well, you've got your lines and spaces, right? So your staff, line, space, line. Your hand is a good little visualization for your staff because there's 5 lines, bup, 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 and the space is in between, right? So if you memorize your lines and your spaces, we have tricks. Like for treble clef, who's got a trick for remembering your treble clef? E, G, B, D, F. That's your treble clef. Here's one I learned in school. Every good boy deserves fudge. That was one. And then face in the space, F-A-C-E. Yeah, I want to hear your best memory device for your treble clef, because then we're going to talk. Oh, Anil. Good job, Anil. Anil is already giving us one for bass clef. Good burritos don't fall apart. All right. So in bass clef, it's different. Everything is shifted down in what you have to remember. So like on a treble clef, G was here. On a bass clef, G is here. So Anil gave us a good memory sentence there. Go, good burritos don't fall apart. G, B, D, F, A. So if that takes a while to get into your brain and like remember what each note is. Also, but another trick I like to use is if you can just remember one note, like if you can just remember that this is B right here on bass clef, just go on your alphabet, go up the musical alphabet. So what comes after B in the alphabet? C. What comes after C in the alphabet? D. What comes after D? E, F, G, A. So if you just remember one line or one space, you can figure out any note on the staff. Just go up the alphabet. Okay. Sonia Cruz says, you love my videos. Thanks so much. Subscribe says jazz on the flute. Yes, you can play jazz on the flute. Let's see. Bonus points if you can name the song. Can anyone name that song? That's a famous jazz song by Sonny Rollins. Sonny Rollins is one of the greatest jazz saxophone players who ever lived, and he's still living. He's a living jazz legend. I'm going to see if anyone knows that song. I'm going to let that go for a while. Jonas says that he made Wind Symphony and Region Band. Congratulations. I have a question here from Raymond Roberts. Raymond is 37. He says, I'm older. Well, I'm older than you, Raymond, but we're about the same age. Play guitar and upright bass and just started clarinet. Jazz clarinet advice is jazz clarinet is not much different than regular old just playing clarinet. I recommend you listen to Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Buddy DeFranco. Eddie Daniels is a living legend who's one of the more recent folks, jazz clarinet. The thing that maybe is different on jazz clarinet than classical is getting more flexibility to bend notes. So I recommend you work on bending notes. So take like a high C, and then you work on bending the note down by pulling your bottom lip, like you're pulling the reed away from the mouthpiece. Right? I'm sorry if that's a little loud on the microphone there. You can do some of that stuff and make it sound jazzy. Probably the most famous example of bending pitch on clarinet. Can anyone name what song this comes from? What classical piece? Anyone know what that's from? That's a famous piece. Nicholas, you got the right answer. It's Rhapsody in Blue. Good job. So there's a little bit of a tip for jazz clarinet. Let's see here. Gender Bender says tuning advice for flute players. Well, I don't know where you are in your studies on flute, but of course our main tuning spot on the flute is right here. Pull out if you want to make your flute sound lower. Push in if you need to make it sound higher to the tuner. And then a lot of it has to do with the way you have your embouchure playing over the lip plate here. So if you're finding yourself sharp on the flute in the middle of a note, you can kind of bring it down by coming on, rolling the flute in a little bit. So you can kind of control your note. If you're like holding a note in the middle of a song, you can't stop and adjust your flute, but you can kind of roll in a little bit to make it a little flatter, and you can roll out a little bit to make it a little sharper. So try that with a tuner. That might help you. Dennis, check it in with you.
After playing a trumpet, somebody says after they played a lot of songs in orchestra, he finds it hard to play the high notes. Any suggestions? Oh,
well, yeah. I mean, do you remember who that was by any chance?
I don't.
Okay. Someone early on asked about having trouble playing high notes after playing for a while. Am I getting that right, Dennis?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's normal. When you play, so when we're playing an instrument, we're using muscles, right? So especially for trumpet players and baritone and euphonium and trombone players and tuba players, their brass players tend to have more getting tired on their embouchure as you play. I mean, I play saxophone for the most part, and we rarely get tired. I mean, we can play forever, and it's like, but playing a brass instrument is a little bit harder on your muscles, and so it's totally normal to get tired throughout the course of a concert. So you have to work on, we call it your endurance. It's like being a marathon runner. So you can't just pick up your trumpet and play once a week. You have to be like a marathon runner. You can't just run one marathon a week and not do anything the rest of the days. You have to do 10 miles each day or something like that, and do more practicing each day to build up your muscles. So it's totally normal to get tired. Just means you want to work on your endurance by practicing every day. A lot of people are asking about chromatic scales. Do you guys have auditions coming up? Because I know we have our district band auditions coming up soon. Well, I want to answer this one first because Nicholas checked in and says, I quit band and I want to join back. How do I ask the band teacher? Well, I say just walk into the classroom, hopefully when they're not teaching, and just nicely ask to rejoin. I know if a student came, when a student quits band, I'm always sad to see them go. And if they come back and say they want to join again, would be thrilled to have you sign up again. So just nicely ask your teacher. I'm sure they'll love to have you back. That's my advice. So chromatic scales. So someone said about clarinet. Like I said, chromatic scale is knowing every single sharp and flat all the way up your instrument and all the way back down. And it's required for a lot of auditions. So it's a really good thing to practice. My advice is practice it slowly. We always know when we're practicing something tricky, we never start fast because then you're just going to play mistakes and you'll learn your mistakes. Start way, way slow and get every single note. And as you practice, right? And as you do that, you also want to make sure you're learning your alternate fingerings. There are some chromatic fingerings on clarinet and flute and saxophone and oboe where you want to learn these special fingerings that are just for chromatic scales. Arunas, when practicing chromatic scale, which fingering do I use if there are multiple for the same note? That's what I was just talking about. Arunas is when you're playing a chromatic scale, there are certain finger patterns that are going to make more sense. So ask your teacher about that. I mean, for example, in the clarinet, right? So here's the B flat we always learn. Here's the B we always learn first, and there's the C. When you're going slow, da, 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 it's fine to do this. But when you're going fast, like say you have to go, so say I'm just going to play. Even then, I had a little bit of a blip from here to here. So if you use your chromatic fingering, it gets rid of the blip. And you can go very fast, like this. On the regular fingering, you can't do that. It's very difficult. So talk to your teacher, and they should be able to help you with that. Dennis, another question?
Yeah, on the alto sax with 3 reeds, how to get to a low B? And they can get to a C, but can't get to the low B.
Low notes on the alto sax. Yeah, this is another question that comes around a lot, is getting low notes on the saxophone. So I think I've talked about this before. As you go lower on the saxophone, the shape you have on the inside of your mouth, we call it the voicing, the way your inside of your mouth is shaped. So everyone right now, I want you to close up the inside of your mouth like you're going to take a swallow of water, like you're in the middle of swallowing a sip of water. Everything's closed, right? Now imagine like you're yawning with your mouth closed. And your whole inside of your mouth opens up. I also talk about imagining like there's a little ping pong ball or a golf ball sitting on your tongue. That opens up the mouth, and that lets you get lower on the saxophone. So as you're going down the scale, you have to slightly open your mouth like there's a golf ball getting a little bit bigger on your tongue. Ball, and that lets you get low notes. Sometimes teachers will say, drop your jaw. I don't like to use that phrase because it sounds like you're supposed to go like that. That's too much. It's very, very tiny movement. Like maybe that much. Okay, that's going to help you with your low notes. Let's see here. Epic sax guy. I saw a lot of requests for that. You mean this one? I have a video on how to play that song. That's one of the crowd favorites. Someone asked me where I teach. I teach at Garnet Valley School District, which is in Pennsylvania. So if any of my students out there are here watching, make sure you give me a shout out. Thanks for my students for watching. Clarinet believer. I don't know what Dakota, can you let me know what you're requesting there? I wonder if you typed that wrong. Anil has asked a few times, how do I circular breathe? All right. Anyone out there know how to circular breathe? What instrument do you play? Oh, Anil, are you playing saxophone, I think, now? Tenor sax? So the way you circular breathe is as you're playing, you allow your cheeks to fill with air. And what you have to do is you force the air from your cheeks through the clarinet or the instrument, and you breathe in through your nose at the same time. So everyone try this with me. Ready? Fill up your cheeks with air. Now, without using your lungs, use your cheek muscles to push the air out of your lips like this. Like you're a balloon that's letting out of air. And feel the air. Now, fill your cheeks with air and breathe through your nose like this. So what we have to do when we circular breathe is practice keeping our cheeks filled with air, breathe in through your nose at the same time you push air out with your cheek muscles. So it feels very strange, but we can play a long note like this. people that are really good at doing that can do it without that weird noise I was making. You practice it, you get it really smooth. Okay, folks, believe it or not, that went really quickly. We're pretty much out of time. So before we go, can you all just check in? I'll give you some shout outs and let me know where you're watching from. Let's do that. Where are you watching from? We'll do some shout outs to people. Let me know where you're watching from. Virginia. Michaela's in Virginia. Daniel is in the UK. Nicholas Nelson is in Australia. Wow, what time is it there? Arunas is in Whoa, a lot of you guys here. Arunas is in Finland. The Woodsters is in Dover. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Raymond. Amy is in Saskatchewan. Wow, you guys, you're watching from all over. Fly is in Texas. Ghostzilla is Colonial Heights. Danny Gaming, Florida. QWERTY, North Carolina. Lindy, Ohio. Grace, Texas. Renee, Bay Area. OMG, it's Esther is in Freeport. Juicy Pickle is in Washington State. Alaska. Darlene, San Francisco, Texas. So guys, thank you all for watching. We have another one subscribed from the UK. As you can see right here, I really appreciate if you guys would follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and if you let your friends know to follow me, to subscribe on YouTube. I'm getting close to 200,000 subscribers, sort of close. I'm at about 181, so that's going to be exciting when we hit 200,000. So thank you all I hope you're all already subscribers. Tell your friends to subscribe. And we've gotten a lot of great questions today. We're going to end it now at 30, after our 30 minutes are up here. And I just want to say thank you all for watching. Follow me here on all these various sites, and tune in again next week. I hope you all have a great week. Remember to keep practicing and have a great time. So I'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.